Petre, što je to HSF?
HSF je Herceg Novski strip festival, 17. po redu i mi smo tu.
Da, što će reći da je Stripovedač konačno na radnom letnjem odmoru. Spojili smo lepo i korisno.
Kako misliš o odmoru?
Pa mislim, plivaćemo, ali to se neće videti.
120 umetnika u narednih nekoliko dana crtaće za goste festivala, pričati o svojim radovima i nas čeka ozbiljan posao.
Da, mi ćemo se potruditi da vidite veliki deo ove atmosfere, jedan sjajan festival koji, kao što je Petar rekao, okuplja više od 100 gostiju i preko, naravno, stotina drugih posetilaca.
Tako je i zbog toga, eto, uživajte u narednih sat vremena kada ćete pogledati koje smo to gosta odabrali samo za vas. Neke od njih smo snimili pa ćemo ih ostaviti za naredne epizode.
Da, mi smo se sredili.
Jeste?
Namazali smo se nekim dobrim faktorom.
Vreme je ugodno, oko 30 stepeni kao i svakog septembra ovde.
Pijte dosta tečnosti i gledajte Stripovedač u narednih skoro sat vremena.
Uživajte!
Jovane, svedoci smo da poslednjih nekoliko godina stvarno strip je sve više popularan ne samo kod nekih pravih fanova, nego kod običnih ljudi, kod recimo knjižare i knjižarski lanci se okreću izdavanje stripova. Kako ti gledaš taj fenomen koji konstantno raste poslednjih nekoliko godina?
Pa sigurno da velike zasluge ima i hollywoodska produkcija koja je eto ponovo uvela strip u modu, da kažem, i da su sve mnogo ljudi sada se zanima za strip nakon što je odgledalo poneki film, a samim tim se zainteresovala i mlađa populacija, samim tim otvorila što se tržišta nekog poput japanskog stripa koje je uplivalo u region i jednostavno opčinilo tu omladinu koja je do sada imala prilike da gleda možda samo anime verzije tih svojih junaka. I nekako strip pojavljivao se sve više u javnosti, sve su uticajniji bili autori koji se bave tom umjetnosti i sve su bila ljepša izdanja koja su izlazila na ovim prostorima. Luksuzne korice, dobar papir, kvalitetni prevodi, uvodnici, pogovori i sve to skupa od pravih ljubitelja stripa donijelo je da strip bude i dobar poklon, da strip bude i nešto što želite da vaše dijete sada čita, a ne da igra igrice ili koristi mobilni telefon ili tablet i slično. Jednostavno, ovo je pravo vrijeme za strip. Ja mislim da se vrati na velika vrata, da bude dio mainstreama i to veliki dio mainstream umjetnosti. I to je to. Jednom kada zainteresujete mlađu populaciju, sa njima se zainteresuju i odrasli. Jednostavno, živimo u jednom lijepom dobu za strip. Nadam se da će i tiraži postepeno početi da rastu, ali sve ostalo je zaista na nivou kakvim sam želio da bude cijelog svog života.
Da. Evo, u Herceg Novom smo na strip festivalu 17. po redu, tako. Kad pogledaš taj neki timeline i tu neku razvojnu liniju, koliko je on u stvari sad postao jedan veliki festival?
U svakom smislu veliki. Znamo i mi sami kao organizatori možda koji su to detalji koje treba da utegnemo, ali upravo ti detalji čine ovaj festival nekako jedinstvenim. Opuštena atmosfera, fantastična interakcija gostiju i publike. Cijeli grad, cijela privreda grada, cijeli grad kao administracija koji stoji iza ovog festivala i predani rad trojice zaista velikih strip entuzijasta učinili su da ovaj događaj bude magičan po mnogo čemu, da imamo priliku da dovodimo sve ozbiljnije i veće goste sa ozbiljnijim i većim karijerama, da ih približavamo ljudima i da ostvarimo upravo ono što smo ostvarili sve ovo vrijeme, a to je da koliko god je poznat gost, koliko je velika zvijezda stripa, da apsolutno taj neko ko dođe i bude dio publike ima priliku da se porazgovara s tim čovjekom, da razmijeni iskustva. I što su na preskonferenciji našoj rekli, ne samo da pričamo o stripovima, da pričamo o životu, kako vi živite ovdje, kako mi živimo ovamo, šta bi voljeli da promijenimo i tako dalje. Herceg Novski strip festival traje 6 dana, sam po sebi. To je ogroman zadatak i mnogo vremena da se i strip autori i publika upoznaju, postaju prijatelji, vežu se za ovaj grad. Geografija našeg grada je fantastična. Imamo plaže, sunce, more, brod, časove ronjenja, sve te neke aktivnosti koje dopunjuju one stripovske i umjetničke. Prije nekoliko godina smo počeli sa vrlo velikim, jakim muzičkim programom. Ovaj festival je sada jedno opšte umjetničko kulturološko čudo, a Nikola, Nebojša i ja smo na misiji ne samo da promovišemo strip, već da isforsiramo kulturu kod mlađeg svijeta koliko je god to moguće, jer smo u današnjem vremenu, pored toga što je strip popularan, također bombardovani svakakvim sadržajima sa svih medija. Jednostavno, ovo je jedna mala oaza ljepote, talenta, osmijeha i eto, uspijevamo već 17 godina to da održimo i nadam se da ćemo uspijevati još mnogo godina.
Hvala ti puno, Jovane, na ovom kratkom intervju. Mi ćemo da nastavimo da uživamo u festivalu. Vidimo se u danima koji dolaze.
Dobrodošli i vi sami izvucite maksimum iz svega ovoga što mi pružamo.
Hoćemo. Hvala vam puno.
Na ovom festivalu Herceg Novom upoznali smo jednu mladu autorku koja se zove Yi Yang. U pitanju je autorka iz Kine koju je do sada već upoznao dobar deo strip sveta. Reći ću vam samo da je crtala jednu epizodu Dilana Doga. Jako rado sarađuje sa italijanskim izdavačima, a crtala je neke dosta zanimljive stvari za kineske izdavače. Poprilično je bila omiljena ovde na festivalu gde su redovi za njene crteže bili podugački. Zato imajte strpljenje u narednih 5 do 10 minuta i poslušajte šta ima da vam kaže Yi Yang. Welcome to our comic book show, Stripovedač. It's nice to have you here. So how do you feel so far here in Herceg Novi?
Okay, thanks guys for inviting me because it's really a huge honor because I heard a lot about your big festivals from my friend Giorgio Pontrelli, and he taught me so much beautiful things about the festival. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm just doing really relaxed work travel together.
You are one of the stars here in this festival. How old are you, and how many years so far you are practicing, drawing and making comics?
Yeah, but actually I'm 29-year-old, so I'm not that young. I know I show like younger. Okay, I've studied in artist high school, so I've been drawing for more than 14 years, I think, yeah.
Your first comic books or your first drawings were in China. How do you compare, European comic books from your native comic books from China?
I think the market in China now is not that mature like here because we may still have some stereotypes about the comic books, like comic books that are all for the children, for teenagers. But now, like here in Europe, especially in Italy, in France, we are now constructing a group, and the readers really different with ideas more specific for the comic books and so on. In China, it's more like we're still working on it, and thanks for my generation, like our generation, we grew up with comic books and animes so long, and so we are now changing the whole market, but not so easy to do, absolutely, and also because we are so close to Japan, so we got many influence from Japan manga and also Korean manga. I think we're just working on it, and will be changed like in 5-10 years.
Yeah, of course, it's going very, very fast. Yeah. But what's the favorite, genre in China among the comic books?
By now, I think it's more and more into the independent comic books, and more like for the the genre is like an author talk about his own story, something more interest himself. Yeah.
You worked for Italian publishers. You worked on Dylan Dog. That's like you have one episode of Dylan Dog.
Yeah.
What do you think about that character?
I'm not really sure about what my feel is because sincerely I read a few books about Dylan Dog, but I totally just grabbed my pencil when the first time I needed to draw it because it's more naturally for me. But I didn't imagine that how it could be easy for me. For me, it's kind of like more than Sherlock Holmes because I'm huge fan of Sherlock Holmes. So I think maybe that's why.
Did you do something else for European publishers and for our place?
Yeah, I work more on area of graphic novels, and now I'm working on the other books also for French, for Dupuis.
Can you tell us something about it? I mean, at least what is it about?
Yeah, actually, I'm just the start of the project. It's kind of like a story, like Walking Dead, but without zombies. Just people, they're crazy.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. What's your? What your dream job looks like? What you are dreaming about drawing? What kind of comic would you like to do to the rest of your career?
I think I'd like to do more and more stories like not too realistic, but always talk about the value of the life, like not really in a way serious way, but still talk something. I think the comic books can always bring up the philosophy in another way. I don't know if I explain. Yeah.
I understand it. Thank you very much for this interview, and we wish you the very best in your career.
Thank you guys.
A sad malo pričamo o Dani Dimat. Ko je Dana? Dana dolazi iz Francuske, rođena u Italiji i kao mlada autorka imala je privilegiju da potpiše ugovor sa francuskom kućom Soleil. Ona već dugi niz godina radi za ovu kuću, radi za kuću Draku. Ove godine očekujemo njen novi naslov, La Baroque Epopée du Monde, a Dana je bila jako raspoložena da uradi i intervju za Stripovedač. Svi oni kažu, nije mi nešto engleski dobar, ne znam, ali to je toliko šarmantno jer znamo o kojim se autorkama radi. Prvoklasni. Welcome to Herceg Novi.
Thank you.
And for the beginning, let's talk about your beginnings. What was the first comic that entered your comic world professionally, comic world?
I've started when I was 19 years old with a little editor. I was in the comic school in Naples, and somebody proposed me to try to do a book, a French book. I accepted, and my adventure started at that moment. So.
It's nice. It's nice kind of adventure.
Yeah. I didn't love it so much because it was a polar in football juniors. I didn't like polar and football, but it was a good experience to understand what it means to do bande dessinée, so a French comics.
And later you started to work with Soleil, right?
Yeah.
Right?
1 year later.
Yeah, and what was that first title? I think it was a history kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes, it was historical. In Japan, the story of a geisha, how this girl started to be a geisha, and how she finished to be free about also this kind of world where she was in a kind of cage because she didn't want to be just a geisha. She wanted to be an independent woman. So it's a kind of feminist also story. Yes.
So do you prefer those historical screenplays and stories?
I like, yes, but my favorite is fantasy. So, and I'm working now on the Elf, always with the same editor as the Parfum de Soie, the story of the geisha. So it's Soleil, Delcourt Soleil in France. And Elf, it's a really, really fantasy history. So.
And I think you have your own stories and screenplays. So any chance to do all by yourself, maybe in the future?
Yeah, maybe one day. For the moment, I don't know how I want to talk about the story. I want to draw, but I think it will be a kind of fantasy, a kind of metaphor of life, personal experience, and personal problems also. So,
what was the latest title that you finished?
Elf, the 35, Elf Noir, donc Dark Elves, with Soleil and with Christopher Arleston as a writer.
And what about Lord of the Rings?
Well, I love Lord of the Rings. And it's a kind of inspiration, I think, for Elf, because it's the same kind of strange characters, elf and other.
Do you do your color in your paintings or not?
No, I don't do color. I just do black and white pages, and so I have colorists because in France comics are always in color. So it's really important to have a good colorist, and my colorist is Stefania Acquaro. She's Italian, and I've chosen her. So
that's interesting. You said everything is in color. Do you love also black and white comics?
I love that. I've started with that because when I was younger, I read a lot. I read a lot of manga, and sometimes black and white, and also fumetti. So Italian comics, they were just in black and white. So now we have colors too in Italy, but times change. So things change.
Thank you very much, Dana. We will gonna change in the future, so I'm sure that your change is gonna be much better and better, and with a lot of awards in the future.
Thank you. I hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Merci.
you.
Biggest impression from this festival is that the people you meet here, they really want to meet you. They want to interact, and they're all very friendly. So I feel appreciated as an artist because it's not work, it's fun.
Highlight ovog festivala je, pored toga što je ovo najbolji balkanski strip festival, definitivno prilika da i čitaoci, i autori, i urednici, izdavači neposredno budu u kontaktu jedni među drugima.
The love of the medium shown by people here and appreciation of the creators who come over here to kind of support the show, and the environment's been lovely.
Još jedan gost iz Srbije koji je došao ovam u Herceg Novi je Jovan Ukrupina, momak koga sigurno znate po stripu koji je radio za francusko govorno područje žena Pjera Pekoa. Inače je radio seriju kratkih stripova za vekovnike, veliki, ozbiljan ilustrator, čovek koji pravi sjajne crteže i odlične stripove, stoga poslušajte šta on ima da kaže i da vam poruči odavde iz Herceg Novog.
Jovane, kako je po tebi prošlo ova godina festivalski, kada pričamo o festivalima stripa?
U Srbiji ili...
Možeš da mi pričaš i van Srbije?
Pa mislim da je prošlo nikad bolje. Znači imali smo festivale u Kragujevcu, festival u Nišu, sad Herceg Novi, u Mostar će biti uskoro, i još par neki Leskovac, naravno, da ne zaboravim, tako da mislim da je prošlo više nego dobro, da.
Pretpostavljam da si redovan na festivalima, da li voliš takav način života?
Obožavam, ali mi trenutno obaveze ne dozvoljavaju da se pojavljujem na svakom festivalu, tako da se izvinjavam svima koji su me zvali, ja nisam uspeo da dođem. Jer ja, i pored naših festivala, u stvari festivala u regionu, posećujem i festivale po Belgiji i Francuskoj. Tamo me zovu, tako da nisam baš u stanju da posjetim svaki na koji me pozovu. A inače obožavam, naravno, mislim, zbog toga i radimo. Da nema festivala, pitanje da bi se bavio stripom. Možda bi radio neki pametni posao, tako da, eto, to je to otprilike.
Šta trenutno radiš? Da li nešto završavaš?
Trenutno radim za francuskog izdavača Soleil. Radim serijal koji je baziran na Lovecraftovom karakteru, tako da je jako zanimljivo za crtanje. Priča je zanimljiva, ima dosta zombija, fantastike, Prvog svetskog rata, znači mešavina svega i svačega. Trenutno sam na drugom tomu, radio sam već prvi, još nije izdat, čekamo koloristu da se smiluje.
Pozdrav za koloristu.
Da.
I ovim putem.
Nadam se da gledaš Stripovedača i nema veze što si Francuz, tako da evo, čekamo njega i nadam se da će uskoro biti prvi tom izdat u Francuskoj i Belgiji.
Koliko ti prija taj milje Lovecraftovski? Teška reč za vežbanje.
Da.
S obzirom da li ste se držali nekog arhaičnog pristupa ili ste možda nešto ubacili moderno u samu priču?
Pa, Jean-Pierre Pecot je pisao priču i mislim da je on ostavio svoj pečat. Nije priča, nije totalno skinuta nijedna Lovecraftova priča, već je samo, kažem, po karakteru rađena i priča je totalno nova. Tako da mislim da će biti zanimljiva čitaocima. Ne znam šta sam još prvo...
Pitaću te nešto drugo, nema veze. Šta je ono što si možda ti sada otkrio kod Lovecrafta i takvog načina pripovedanja?
Pa ništa novo, znaš šta, ja moram priznati da ja nisam neki Lovecraftov fan, pročitao sam samo par priča u mladosti, tako da nisam, da mi ne zamere sad ljudi koji obožavaju Lovecrafta, mislim, poštujem ono što je radio, mislim, uticao je na sve živo, tako da, ali ja jednostavno se tad kad sam, možda bi trebao ponovo da pročitam, pa možda ću se primiti više, ali ja kažem, glavno je što mi je jako zanimljivo za crtanje, mislim, ima dosta tih nekih stvari koje ja inače volim da crtam. Eto, to je to što mi je trenutno bitno, mislim, i mislim da će biti zanimljiva priča. Mislim, sad vidjet ćemo da će se primiti po Francuskoj, nisam siguran, ali evo, držimo figije.
I loved everything about the festival, at least from beginning until now is amazing. And what I think I'm gonna bring home is the warmth of the people, the friendship that they gave me.
Ljudi koji su stalni tu i ne samo naši tu sa Balkana, nego i internacionalna ekipa, to mi je ono najdraže.
2 years ago I was here for the first time and I got a bunch of friends and I think it's like the most endearing thing you can have in comics, to just doing this huge fair of professionals hanging out together and not really having any real obligations, but still just yapping together and having fun.
Iz Slovenije ovam u Herceg Novi po ko zna koji put dolazi Istok Sitar. Znate tog čoveka, kažu kontroverzni strip autor, mada šta je danas kontroverzno? Ili još bolje, šta je nekada bilo kontroverzno? Saznajte u intervjuu koji smo uradili sa njim još prvog dana festivala.
Istoče, ajde da krenemo od 84. godine. Nećemo dugo pričati, ali zanima me ta godina. Tada si izbacio svoj prvi strip, evo, skoro 40 godina od toga. Da li ti on zaista bio neka prekretnica tada za buduće dane?
Pa da, moj prvi strip je bio baš u Orvelovskoj godini 1984. Mogu ovdje da ga pokažem, ovo je moja monografija koja je izašla 2019. godine i eto, ovo je taj prvi strip. Bila je samo jedna stranica, a vidi se tad da sam bio pod uticajem Mebiusa, naslov je Ko je ubio crtača stripova. I samo jedna stranica je bila, tako i to sam radio nekih nedelju dana, mislim, da ovo samo jednu stranicu. Evo sad uradim jednu stranicu za jedan dan. I to je bilo objavljeno u literarnoj reviji Mentor, pošto u Sloveniji nemamo baš puno strip revija i tih stvari i izlazila je, recimo, da kažem malo to, izlazio je Zvitorepec, to je bila strip časopis koji je bio poput novosadske panorame. I baš u ono isto vreme kao je što je panorama izlazila je i Zvitorepec izlazio. Te kasnije, recimo 1973. godine je počeo izlaziti zabavnik na slovenačkom jeziku, Politikin zabavnik. I to je ono moje najlepše uspomene na stripovsko detinjstvo je bio zabavnik. Jedva sam čekao svaki petak što je bio kraj škole i što je izašao zabavnik.
Svaki petak izuzetak.
Da, baš to.
Spomenuo si i vidimo tvoju monografiju, ona je izašla 2019. godine, dakle 35 godina tadašnjeg rada. Da li je ona hronološki popisana i koja je njena koncepcija? Kako si sredio?
Ova monografija se zove Ispod crvene zvezde i ovdje su predstavljeni samo moji angažovani stripovi. Ja onako radim više različitih žanrova. Radim dečje stripove, radim erotske stripove, ali najdraži od svih su mi, recimo, društveno-kritički stripovi. Jer baš u tim stripovima se borim protiv svih ovih političkih i društvenih anomalija kao što su nacionalizam, fašizam, rasizam, ksenofobija, homofobija i te stvari.
Za ljudi koji ne znaju, ti se baviš i teorijom stripa, pisao si mnoge knjige o tome. Doživljamo sad neku ekspanziju, da kažem malo i tog superherojskog stripa, vratili su se izdavači, sve ih je više. Kako je scena u Sloveniji? Kako gledaš sad na to? Publika? Gde se ona nalazi? Da li postoji mlada publika?
Pa baš sam prije rekao kakva je bila situacija za vreme Jugoslavije, kad su izlazile dve sjajne revije, znači Zvitorepec i Zabavnik. Zabavnik je prestao izlaziti, mislim da tamo oko 89. godine, poslije nije više. Mislim slovenački zabavnik, samo slovenački, da, ono prevedeni. I poslije 92. godine je izašao na videlo Stripburger, ali to je više alternativna revija koji izlazi 2 puta godišnje, a u engleskom jeziku, tako da ne možemo baš da pričamo da je to neka slovenačka revija stripa. Kažem, nema revije i stripovi su bili prvi koji su u ovoj novinskoj krizi ispali iz novina. To je najlakše. Karikature političke to su još ostale, ali stripovi, to svako kaže, to niko ne čita i to ono, i izbacili su ih iz novina. Ali po drugoj strani je sad puno više albuma i izlaze stripovi u knjigama, u albumima, u nekim debelim svjeskama. Puno dosta pomaže i Ministarstvo za kulturu. Ima puno nekih malih izdavača, recimo, koji se bave samo stripom. Naprave, šta ti ja znam, nekih 5 ili 10 naslova godišnje, a to većinom slovenačke autore, tako da je to ova scena izdavačka nije loša.
Čest si gost Herceg Novskog festivala, tako?
Da.
Jedan od ozbiljnijih festivala, zašto mu se ti konkretno vraćaš?
Pa, za mene lično ovo je najbolji festival na kojem sam ikad bio. A bio sam, recimo, svuda po Europi, od Angulema u Francuskoj do Soluna, recimo. A ponajviše sam bio na festivalima u državama bivše Jugoslavije. Tako. Znaš koliko ima, recimo, festivala u XU?
Ne.
Šta misliš, otprilike?
Pa ajde da kažem nekih 40-ak.
Da, evo. Pa nema ih Francuska, Italija nema toliko.
Nešto smo nabrajali i sad iz tog nekog nabrajanja došli smo do neke velike cifre. Pa Niš samo ima 2 festivala, znači to je već jedan grad, 2. Kad krenemo u svaki veći grad u Srbiji ima po festivalu.
I to je neverovatno što je
10, recimo.
Nikola Čorčin, on je počeo sa tim festivalom.
Aha.
I on je i strip crtač. Danas je baš promocija posle njegove knjige, njegovog novog stripa, što je radio skupa sa Milkom Pekom. I onda su se mu pridružili još i Jovan Subotić i Nebojša Mandić i festival je postao stvarno veliki festival u svetskim razmerama. Tako da i ove godine ima recimo 120 ljudi, što je neverovatan broj gostiju.
Srče, hvala ti puno što si bio gost našeg specijala. Uživaj u daljem programu. Mi se vidimo prvom prilikom u Novom Sadu, Beogradu ili već gde na nekom festivalu.
Dobro, hvala vama.
Šta je ostavilo na tebe utisak najviše na festivalu?
Dobar dan, ja sam Aleksa Gajić. Pa na mene je najviše utisak ostavilo nešto što ne bi trebalo da kažem, znači
alkohol.
The people is the core business of this festival. Absolutely, this is the secret.
Crtanje za publiku.
Što?
Zato što mislim da je jako dobro organizirano, mislim da ljudi imaju prilike, baš sam ja prvi put sad zapravo i od drugih kao autor, od drugih autora tražio crteže, mislim da zanimljivo vidjeti ljude kako će interpretirati tvoje vlastite likove i mislim da je to ful zanimljivo.
Ovog sjajnog Vulverina nacrtao je Francis Portela i ne samo to. Ovaj izvanredni Španac nacrtao je i Batmana i Robina, Legiju superheroja, Crnog pantera, Green Lanterna, Spidermana i tako dalje i tako dalje. Neumorno crta, pravi sjajne stripove, a njega smo uhvatili dok je sunce bilo najjače. So Francis, it's very hot today.
Yes.
And we are talking about comics.
That's right.
Yeah, welcome to Herceg Novi. For the beginning, you're the man who managed Marvel and DC.
Yes.
Both big names and big superheroes. Can you tell me just a little bit more about that experience working for big houses, the biggest ones? First was Marvel and then was DC?
Yes, first was Marvel, then was DC, but it was a lot of time ago. And the experience is like any other experience, like any other company. Maybe they are bigger and you start to work on Marvel and DC because you want to play with the toys that you met when you were a child, and that part is very fun. But at the end, it's really hard work because you must. The most important thing is the deadlines, and you must work a lot of hours and trying to be always better. So, in one hand it's fun, and on the other hand it's highly stressful. So.
Yeah, and back in the days, what was your most famous character? Most famous and most maybe lovable character?
Lovable for me or for
you?
For me? Oof, maybe Legion of Superheroes for DC. I wasn't a reader of Legion of Superheroes when I was a kid. I only, of course, I read some books, but not they weren't my favorite ones. But to work in Legion of Superheroes was maybe my best moment because a lot of things. Sometimes you know something. Speaking English is I must process a bit. No? You know, it was one of my best moments because I worked with Paul Levitz, who was a writer when I was a kid, and he was very nice to me, and I did a restart of Legion of Superheroes with a new #1, and it was my book. It was I was the main artist in the book, so it was cool. And previously I did Black Panther in Marvel, and it was cool too, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah, and what kind of genre do you like?
What?
What kind of genre?
Genre.
Do you prefer
Yes.
as yourself in comics?
My favorite genre in comics and movies in everything is Western.
Ah, okay.
But I never had the opportunity to do one.
Really?
One of my favorite comics is Blueberry,
Okay.
the French comic.
Giraud?
Yeah, yes, Giraud is my favorite artist. So, and I want to do one Western maybe one day, not for the moment.
And for now, for this part of year and the end of the 2023, any new works, any new comics?
Any new
By the
comics?
end of the year?
No.
No?
No, because for the last years I'm doing a 12-issue miniseries as part of a transmedia world, about everything about a video game. You know, there will be a great video game, big video game. There will be novels, podcasts, board game, and maybe a Netflix movie. There will be a lot of things, but the video game is late. You know, it's the develop of the video games. If you want to have a good video game, it's always slow.
And what's the name of the project?
It's Unknown 9. Unknown 9. Every side project will have the second name. Mine, the comic is Unknown 9 Torment. Now I'm drawing last issue, but there is not any published issue yet. There is the web page where you can see in unknown9.com. You can see the teaser of the video game. You can read the first comic. You can read the first novel, and you can listen to the maybe 2 or 3 first podcasts. But for the moment, I don't know when it will be. Okay. When it will be. It will be
out.
Yes, it will be out. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you once again. I wish you all the best here in Herceg Novi and good things in life.
Izuzetno velika posjećenost svih programa, ogroman broj djece koji je bio svakoga dana na našem festivalu i koji i dalje onako sa puno entuzijazma traži da dobije neko pravo umjetničko djelo od velikih majstora koji su gosti ove godine na Herceg Novskom strip festivalu.
Najviše to što je došlo još više djece nego prošle godine, sa kojima mi već godinama radimo intenzivno.
Tex Wheeler, it's another series in which this character is very young, and I draw the story of the young Tex.
Okay, how do you see young Tex? What's the difference between him and the older version?
The old and the young Tex. There is especially is different. The character has longer hair. It's younger, naturally. The costume is different, and he also is, since he's younger, is more a little more aggressive. Okay, he thinks less than the older Tex that is more mature. And however, these are the principal difference between the two series. But however, the young Tex is very good because in the first story of Tex normal, there are a lot of story in which there are a lot of characters that it is very interesting to show and to discover more about them, and so this new series is very useful to explain to the readers, to text reader, what happens in
those adventures.
Just to fill the holes in the story.
Yes, there are some holes, and in this way the readers can know better about this.
How long do you work on comic books?
How long I draw? Too much time. I start in the beginning of the 19th, when I was younger, and so it is more than 30 years that I draw comics.
What was the first character that you draw for like professionally?
Professionally was a character called Nick Ryder. Nick Ryder, it was a character, a policeman in New York, and it was written by Claudio Nizzi. And I started just in 1902 to draw the first story, and I draw this series for about, it could be 7, 8 years, and it was very useful because I started to draw cars and different characters. For me, was a very good school.
Yeah, of course. What other characters did you draw during your long career?
After Nick Ryder, I drew another character called Napoleone, and I like so much to draw that character. I drew it for about 10 years. It was written by a close friend of mine, Carlo Ambrosini. We worked in the same atelier, same studio. He had the room beside mine, and so I was there when the idea of Napoleone was developing, okay? And I like so much to draw it because it was very well written, good stories, and I like to draw because there was the possibility to draw in a different way, because in each story there were two different stories crossing each other, and so I can try to draw in a different way with different style. For me, it was a very, very good school, and in those years I feel that I was growing like as a drawer. Okay.
Do you know that a lot of people in Serbia and Croatia, here in Montenegro, likes Italian comic books, especially Zagor, Mr. No, Tex Filler,
Alan Ford.
Alan Ford, of course, yeah. What do you think about that?
A lot of times I talk with my friends, my colleagues about this, and it's difficult to find a reason.
Yeah.
Probably I think because there is a link between the two cultures. You are on the other side of Adriatico. I was born in Manfredonia, in Puglia. In the other side of Adriatico, there is a very few miles of sea between us. And I have to say, when I went for the first time in these countries, I feel a very good atmosphere, very close to my country, and especially to my origin country in the south of Italy, and this probably could be a reason.
It's a good reason.
For this. I remember when I saw years ago the first movies of Kusturica, I was very surprised to see the actors reading in the movie Alan Ford. I said, oh yeah, Alan Ford. There is a very straight link between the two cultures.
Okay, for the end of our conversation, when you're not drawing comic books, what kind of comic books do you like to read?
I read and I read in the past a lot of comics. Now I read less comics, but the comics I read now it's a little different from the comics I draw.
Okay.
I'm very close to the French comics, for example. Okay, I can talk about Moebius or Giraud like Blueberry, Tardy, but now I read a little different comics. For example, I like so much the works of some French artists like Bluch or like Christophe Blaine, who has done for me a very, very beautiful works on a kind of reboot of Blueberry avec the writer Sfar, and I like so much his way to draw, his way to tell the story. I was very close to the comics of Muñoz and Sampaio, for example. In my career, I always watch and read comics very different from the comics I do. I can't explain this because probably in my comics readers can't find this, but I'm interested in other kind of comics. But however, I like to draw and to read also Western story like text or everything linked to the Western, because since when I was child I like too much Western atmosphere.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Šta je highlight ovog festivala za tebe?
Druženje sa kolegama, sa autorima, s drugim crtačima.
Od gostiju sam otkrio Zoji Torogud malo pre njenog dolaska na festival, pošto sam skoro naručio njen grafički debi, a vrlo interesantne su i italijanske autorke koje sam prvi put video.
Tanja, reci mi, bila si već 3 puta na festivalu Herceg Novom, šta je ono što po tebi možda se izdvaja na ovaj festival?
Apsolutno prijateljstvo, ljudi, fenomenalni ljudi, takva poznanstva. Evo, kad sam bila zapravo, ja sam nedavno, 2021. sam bila prvi put i kada sam došla, stvarno, maksimalno oduševljenje. Poslije toga dođeš kući i onda crtaš neprekidno, jer ponesete sve to, hoćeš da budeš još bolji, hoćeš opet da dođeš. Tako da, nevjerovatna atmosfera, ali stvarno nevjerovatna atmosfera.
Bila si vredna, dakle, od 2021. do 2023. Šta se desilo za 2 godine u tom profesionalnom svetu stripa?
Da, ja sam zapravo i došla na strip festival 2021. sa grafičkom novelom More je bilo mirno. To sam radila sa Tanjom Stupar-Trifunović, ona je naravno etablirana književnica. Super smo se mi uklopile, mislim tako i kritike i ljudi koji su pročitali to govore. Tako da sam, to sam radila, sad nastavljam nešto i dalje, ali treba vrijeme, zaista treba vremena. Ali kanim se nastaviti baviti tim.
Ostaćemo malo pri tom naslovu, mi smo taj naslov obradili u Stripovedaču. Strip koji je stvarno napravio jedan regionalni uspeh. Dosta se pričalo o stripu. Malo mi samo reci o inspiraciji, mi smo pričali o samoj temi stripa, ali onako dosta je, kako bih rekao, zen pristup celom tom i crtežu i stripu, jako zanimljivo.
Pa da, mislim, kad sam ja pročitala scenario Tanjin, odmah su krenule slike u glavi, odmah je sve se nekako otvorilo i nekako nismo se mi uopšte morale dodatno objašnjavati šta dalje, kako. Bukvalno je ona je napisala, ja sam crtala i negdje pokušavala sam da ne bude samo bukvalno rečenica pa onda odgovor na tu rečenicu, nego kao interpretacija teksta i onda da se to nekako uklopi u širu priču. I ko je pročitao i ko je gledao tu grafičku novelu, vidi da sam ja malo i drugačije kadrirala, recimo, malo ti širi kadrovi, pa jako mi je bilo bitno da kada otvorite stranicu da to sve funkcioniše. I ti širi kadrovi, ne, zapravo i onda svaka stranica možda ima malo teksta, ali širok je pristup bio slikar, kako bih rekao, ja sam slikarka zapravo, pa onda vjerovatno i to je uticalo da tako to izgleda.
Da, zanimljivo, u stvari 2 žanra u jednom, sad spominješ slikarstvo. Šta si onda naučila prilikom ulaska u strip svet od onoga što si već znala o slikarstvu?
Da, pa zapravo me najviše privuklo to pričanje priče, kroz slike, kroz taj spoj slike i riječi. Ja sam se u to zaljubila i naravno u ove festivale koje jako, jako rado posjećujem. Tako da to me nekako, to pričanje priče, zapravo onda sarađujete s nekim i bude sjajan rezultat na kraju. To je, ne znam, čarolija.
Šta te interesuje od priče kao žanrovski? Šta bi možda voljela da radiš ili si radila pa ti se dopalo u tom nekom, ajde da kažem, žanru?
Pa ovako nešto zapravo. Ja volim te, malo me oni zezaju kao, jao, ti uvijek neke misao, nešto, to je nešto što ja zaista volim, to je nekakva, ne znam, ta neka kao razmišljanja koja se pretoču u sliku, koja, ne znam, to me jako privlači.
I poslednje pitanje, da li do kraja godine očekujemo neki tvoj naslov ili možda znaš neki datum u narednih nekoliko meseci? Na čemu radiš?
Da, nećemo sad nikakve datume, to je sigurno, ali polako, vidjet ćemo, treba vrijeme, treba novac, tako da ništa ne mogu sad da obećavam, ali definitivno se nešto mota već u glavi i ako bude, vi ćete prvi saznati.
Hvala ti lepo. Sve najbolje ti želim da u životu.
Hvala tebi.
I nismo slučajno ostavili ovaj najskuplji kadar za najozbiljnijeg gosta, u stvari najveću zvezdu ovogodišnjeg festivala u Herceg Novom.
Tako je, otprilike ovaj pogled koji vidite iza nas vredi neko milionče, vredi i taj autor.
Da, ali nije specijalni efekt.
Nije specijalni efekt, nisu kulise, prosto dan se namestio tako.
A gost se zove naravno Dave McKean, čovjek koji već 35 godina se profesionalno bavi stripom, ilustracijom za knjige, ilustracijom za muziku. Čovjek koji voli da luta po svetu, da istražuje nove priče i da nekako bude nevidljivo vidljiv u ovom velikom svetu.
Tako je, ovaj intervju koji smo uradili sa njim, uradili smo tako da sa njime razgovaramo o bar 10-ak potpuno različitih tema, dakle ne samo o ilustracijama i stripu koji on obožava da radi, nego i nekim drugim stvarima koje ga čine kompletnim autorom.
Otkrite svet Davea McKeana. So Dave, welcome you to Herceg Novi.
Thank you very much. It's amazing to be here.
For the beginning, of course, do you like the festival?
Yeah, it's a completely unusual experience. I've never been to a comics festival quite like this. It's very relaxed. The people are wonderful. The hospitality is wonderful. The hot weather is kind of amazing. The place is beautiful. The mountains surrounding all the time is unique. It's been wonderful. Much closer to a film festival. I like the film festival circuit, and each festival is much more curated and unique and goes out into the community. This feels much more like that. I'm used to comics festivals that are kind of insular and they're just in a convention center and they're kind of all the same, but this is unique.
And when we talk about your work, yesterday I heard a story, a lot of stuff from your work over the period of 40 years.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time. We got album covers, we got comic covers, we got book covers, illustrations, like 3 channels in one. How do you look on those old 3 disciplines? Are they different or similar?
Well, in some ways, they're all the same. They're all basically working out what the problem is, what you're trying to say, what the theme is, what the mood is, what the atmosphere, what the ideas are at the center, and trying to find a tone of voice, a language that best expresses those ideas. So if it's going to be a comic, how those stories are told, how the emotions in the story are portrayed in the choice of media, the choice of storytelling decisions. But then, obviously, to a degree, they're different. So film is very different from comics. You have sound, you have music, you're dealing with a crew and actors. So they do share a lot of DNA, but the differences are interesting and the differences influence each other. So working with actors on films, staging scenes in films has taught me a lot about how to stage a comic book scene better, and drawing in a gallery environment has taught me a lot about how to draw in a panel on a page. So they speak to each other. I learn a lot from doing many different things.
When you look 40 years ago, you started with the comic?
35.
35, okay.
Let's not go completely mad.
Okay,
35.
We will talk in 5 years about 40 years. What was the first, not work, but genre of yours in 35 years ago? Comic?
Well, comics were my first love.
Yeah.
So I went to art school. I wanted to just draw comics. But the great thing that I got from art school and from my teachers there is they just wanted me to look out into the world and experience this world of extraordinary art, culture, music, film, everything. So I became a real sponge and just took everything in. But I always wanted to go back to comics and draw in all of those influences into the new comics that I would do as a professional. So that was the first work that I got published.
Do you love to listen to the music while you're working?
I always listen to music when I work. And I play music, I still play piano every day. But what I found is if I'm trying to tell a particular story and it's set in a particular location, it has an atmosphere to it, if I can find the music that conjures that atmosphere, I can just put it on in the morning when I start and I'm straight back into that world. And music does that, it goes straight in. So it allows me to just fall into that place again and go straight back into the work.
You're traveling a lot.
Yeah.
Are you a comic wanderer? Like, man who loves to wander, not only to be present at the festival.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what I really love. That's my number one thing, to come to these things. I like coming to the festival and meeting people, and I like being able to show my work and talk about it. But most of all, I love coming to a new place and exploring and sucking up the culture, finding a record shop and buying music from the place, going to concerts and just taking it all in. I always take a sketchbook around and do little doodles. I always take my camera around, take lots of photographs, and that's why I'm here.
Let's go back to the present stuff. Any new works by the end of the year?
By the end of the year? Yeah. Well, the end of the year is quite close. I illustrated a book called Invisible Cities. It's by Italo Calvino. It's a beautiful book, a conversation between Kubla Khan and Marco Polo. And Marco Polo is describing all of these cities that he has visited to Kubla Khan to entertain him. But they all sound like versions of Venice. So it's this sort of little chess game between the two of them. It's a really beautiful book. Very highly recommended. But I illustrated that. That's out before the end of the year.
You've always been a fan of history, or not?
Yes, I mean, I'm not a historian. I didn't study, but I've always everything is linked to history. We are part of the grand arc of history, so you have to be interested in it to a degree. Wherever you go, you are fortunate to arrive at a point in that town's history. So I've been reading up about Montenegro generally, the history of the place, and where it's connected, and the fact that it's on the fault line of all of these empires, and it is it has moved between empires and the Venetian state and the Yugoslavian state, and so it's fascinating.
I want to choose one comic in particular right now to talk about it because I love it. It's Batman Arkham Asylum. So it was interesting for me yesterday when you were talking, just to say it again. It was a typical kind of approach to a superhero.
Atypical?
Atypical, yeah.
You think?
Yeah, for me it was. I saw it first time when I was maybe 15, 16. I was like, that's not Batman. That's so dark. So.
Do you mean typical?
Atypical.
Atypical. Okay, that's the opposite of typical.
Yeah, opposite of typical. So I said, what's this? This is so dark, and where is the action? Where is it? And later, it was for me it was one of the best Batmans ever.
Right, okay.
But you mentioned that approach of yours in making it.
Yes. Well, I was sent the script, and I liked superhero comics and read superhero comics when I was a child, when I was 10. But it's been a long time since I really liked those stories. And so, as an adult now, reading it, and Grant Morrison was the writer, he tried to put in lots of interesting layers, psychological layers, to this story. A kind of strange, dark Alice in Wonderland story. I tried to make sense of the main character was a man dressed up as a bat. It just seemed to be an odd thing. So, and I didn't really believe it. And in the script that Grant sent me, Robin was in it. Now I remember Robin from the Adam West Burt Ward television show. So, you know, I just couldn't make sense of it. So I got together with Grant and we talked about it, and talked about turning it into just more of a symbolic story and using it as an archetype, a man-animal. There are cross images, cross between people and birds and people and wolves and people and cats in religious stories and folk stories around the world. That's a very powerful idea, the animal nature inside us. So that seemed to be more interesting. So I tried not to draw him as just a man in a suit, just a sort of ghostly spirit made up of mist and the idea of a character, rather than something so pedantic and specific as dressing up in a costume.
He was not so physical. He was like a smoke.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, for one story, that just seemed to be an interesting way to go. It seemed to be more mysterious and more dreamlike and more nightmarish. And that was my approach with all of the characters. Some of the characters I thought were interesting as themselves. The Joker was ripped off one of my favourite films, The Man Who Laughs. It's a great film. The Two-Face character is basically Jekyll and Hyde in one face. They're strong conceptual ideas. Some of the others I didn't really get, so I just changed them and made them more conceptual. I was very lucky that I was doing this book at a time when DC, well, mainstream comics generally, but DC specifically, were very happy to experiment and try new things, and were enjoying reaching this new audience that had never bought comics before, or maybe had left comics, but they rediscovered new comics written by Alan Moore and written by Neil, and so they were very happy for us to play. That kind of ended a few years later, but we had a golden few years where we could try new things.
And do you have any new scripts, new stories, maybe screenplays?
Yeah, I've got 2 comics that I'm working on, long graphic novels that I'm working on. One that I've written, it's called Caligaro. It's inspired by The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, great German expressionist film, but a completely rewritten version of it. And the other book I've just started, it's about the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known human story, and then the lessons that we can learn from that 5,000-year-old story that we're still not really learning about the way that we're treating the planet. And so that feels like a very urgent story to tell, so I'm doing that one as well.
From Gilgamesh to Gigamesh, like this new artificial intelligence art. It was interesting yesterday. So, your opinion, short answer of course, what do you like or not in artificial intelligence art?
Well, for starters, I would not call it art.
Okay.
Because it doesn't meet the definition that I would use for art. I think art only has one job, really, and that's empathy. It's to allow me, if you create something, if you draw something, you make a film or a piece of music or something, write something, I get to see the world through your mind, through your eyes. And that's the point of art for me. So if I'm drawing something, I want to express something important to me to show you. And by doing that, we can understand each other. We can see through each other's eyes. That's got nothing to do with AI. There is no intelligence in artificial intelligence. It's a terrible name. There is no intelligence. It's just an endless stream of meaningless stuff. Now it looks pretty, and it looks like it's like a sort of sugar rush of brightly coloured stuff.
Nice commercial.
It's I don't know what it is really.
Like step right in.
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah. It's absolutely paper thin, trivial, but an endless plane of it. And so because it's kind of infinite, it's kind of meaningless. It's nothing and everything at the same time. If there was an infinite amount of Leonardo da Vinci's, there wouldn't be a Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci only means something because there was only one. So I don't know where we end up with all of this. I'm very concerned that the notions of creativity and art, which are that's right in the core of the sense of myself, the definitions of creativity and art. If they're just ripped up now that anybody can just type in 3 words and get pictures, and if people call that art and call that creativity, which I don't, then I think I only see the downside of that.
Thank you, Mr. McKean.
Okay.
It was a very nice talk.
Okay, thanks.
Highlight je u stvari da pokušamo da spasimo sve što leti. Letele su čaše, leteli su ovi junaci, ali mi smo i dalje tu. Raspoloženje je dobro i crtači su spremni da odgovore svako naše pitanje, tako da ovdje smo kao fanovi pre svega i to je najlepši deo priče, biti i dalje fani.
I tako vetar je uspio da nam oduva program ovog festivala, ali program nam sada više ne treba.
Ne treba nam, zato što smo sve videli. Svugdje smo bili, u ovih 5 ili 6 dana koliko je festival trajao, upoznali smo skoro 100 sjajnih umetnika, gledali ih kako crtaju, kako stvaraju.
I napravili ovaj specijal sa 17. Herceg Novskog strip festivala. Dođite, ako vam se dopadne emisija sledeće godine, zaista organizacija je perfektna, gosti su bili još bolji, naravno nisu svi stali u ovaj specijal, ali to ne znači da su oni ostali sa strane.
Pa mislim, mi ćemo i dalje da ih ganjamo. Ganjat ćemo ih po drugim festivalima, ganjat ćemo ih da dođu kod nas u studio. U svakom slučaju, to su sve ljudi koji zaslužuju da znate za njih i da pogledate njihove stripove.
Za neke ste možda čuli, ali će nam biti više drago ako ćete otkriti ova sjajne imena iz prevelikog strip univerzumu. Do tada čitajte stripove gde god da ste.
Pozdrav!
I pite tečnost.